apparently this new game came out. I didn't even know about this. There's apparently another Concord that's coming out that I wasn't even fucking aware of. I feel like that it's already. Wait, is it already dead? Wait, it's.
So about a month ago, we talked about this game, Unknown 9 Awakening.
Unknown 9, yeah, accurate. I didn't even know it existed.
There's another giant failure associated with Sweet Baby Inc. Kim Belair having been credited for working on the game, as well as David Bedard at Reflector.
Yeah, she did like the speeches, like she was the one talking.
Behind Unknown 9 Awakening, who's also a co-founder of Sweet Baby Inc. So founding members of Sweet Baby Inc. have worked on Unknown 9 Awakening. And let's get a brief refresher of how that game's been doing before we take a look at the further news regarding this update. Hopping over to SteamDB. As of recording right now, there are currently
Maybe the 9 was referencing to the amount of people that know about the game. That must have been it.
22 people in-game playing Unknown 9 Awakening on Steam.
Holy shit.
Review score sitting at 33.47%. Astronomically terrible, as well as the player count, of course. And the all-time peak player count is also
200.
awful, having achieved 285. To call this game a flop might even be generous.
I don't think it's a flop.
And I don't just say that because of the terribly performing game itself, but everyone...
This is crazy. Like, look at the quality of the game, too. Like, this is millions of dollars getting pissed away. And like, the actress in there, she was the one who played Yennefer in The Witcher.
Associated with Unknown 9 Awakening.
Look at her arms. Yeah, bro, wait a second. I didn't even... God damn. She looks like a male human in WoW.
From Reflector, Sweet Baby Inc., and even Bandai Namco seem to have thought that this would be a great, highly successful new intellectual property, as they were making their own cinematic universe of sorts, including various comic releases to go...
Wait, there's Unknown 9... Oh, no. They're trying... No. Bro. They're in the hole for this probably $100 million. Oh my God. Look at all this media.
Along with the game. And even a web series and scripted podcast. Oh, and also some novels, as you can see here. Got this whole thing lined up. So, like,
yeah, let's
just take a minute to just let this all sink in, man. Like,
who cares?
Holy smokes, dude. This reminds me of Concord, right? Like, didn't the Concord...
No, this is even more embarrassing than Concord, because at least Concord was just a game, right? They had the one secret level thing. But this is, like, basically... These people... Like, this is the definition of counting your eggs before they hatch. These people don't even have one egg. They thought they had a whole dozen.
People think that this was going to be like a long-term, like, Star Wars level successful IP. And they had, like, all these, like, huge ambitions for Concord. I mean, this is a similar thing here with Unknown 9 Awakening.
Oh,
obviously,
my God.
Far less money spent on this than Concord. And I don't believe Sweet Baby Inc.
I don't know if that's true. I mean, if they have all of these IPs running simultaneously... I mean, Concord is a legendary level failure, but I feel like this one, like, if I was one of the people that was like a person that kind of like thought all this out, I would be trying to take out a life insurance policy. I would be like, I need to look out for my family. Like, I just made a really big mistake. Yeah, I'd be taking out a life insurance policy. This is bad.
Involved with Concord at all. I'm simply comparing how both have flopped entirely, and of course there's also similarities in things like DI policies with the games, and also out of touchness and tone deafness from the people involved with both games. The point is, it's just funny to me, the similarities. It's really astonishing when people defend Sweet Baby Inc. They always cite like 2 successful games that they worked on, that being Ragnarok.
I don't think Sweet Baby is the reason why it's bad. I think it's bad and they invite Sweet Baby in to make it worse. I don't think it's like the harbinger of death, right? No, it's they're invited in with open arms and paid for their time.
And also Spider-Man. And the defenders conveniently never talk about the numerous growing list of extreme failures that Sweet Baby Inc. has worked on.
Wait, is this the game?
And another point that I've brought up before is Ragnarok and Spider-Man.
This makes Star Wars Outlaws look like Elden Ring.
What's that?
Okay, imagine a sandwich, but with Battle Royale bread, and MOBA meat, and hero shooter sauce. Oh, it was actually just a metaphor? Supervive. It's fast, it's fun, it's free. Here's a little secret. That's like the goal of the game. But hey, it's not easy, because everything wants you to big forever bye-bye. The other players, the monsters, the train. Sometimes there are 3 trains. I didn't even mention the storm.
My skin hurts.
Cool. Your job is to find loot and level up. There are so many wacky powers to use. See, I'm a bush now. That's something. Choose from over 16 different hunters, like a lady that shoots ice, or a rabbit that shoots moon, or this dude who shoots gun and grenades and a laser. I feel like I'm forgetting something.
Tactical nuke.
Drop on in squads or duos. There's even an arena mode. 4v4, more like forget about playing anything else. I mean, we got grind rails and gliders. Look at me. I am as Icarus. Behold my unburdened form. Oop. But that's just one of the perils. Sure, gliding is fun, but be careful. If you get hit by an enemy, you'll get spiked straight into the abyss. Bye-bye. So, maybe just stay on the ground, where it's safe and nothing bad happens. Oh, hey, it's Kingpin. Hi, Kingpin. Oh, look at that. He's gonna get ya, bud. Gotta be faster than that. Oh. Supervive. Play free on Steam, and bring a friend.
Mr. Manfredi, do you have legal training?
I've had a lot of experience with the law.
Tulsa King, new season now streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus.
Had giant teams working on those games. In other words, SBI's involvement was probably kept at a minimum. But the games that have far smaller teams and therefore likely...
Jesus, look at this. This is so disgusting. Oh my God, why would anybody...
Far more involvement from Sweet Baby Inc. tend to be these huge flops, man. And now in this situation, I haven't even finished everything because...
Look at how shitty this is. I've got to say it. Riddick did this better in 2000 and what was it, 2003? Yeah, this is insane.
Because turns out Reflector is going through layoffs, similar to Zhao, who worked with Sweet Baby Inc., who then had layoffs and then shut down their entire games division. It looks like Reflector is currently going down that same road. As that takes us to Eurogamer, who says, On No 9 Awakening developers report...
report layoffs. How could this happen? How could this have happened to them? Let's be honest, a lot of those games look worse than Half-Life 2. I bet there's a Half-Life 2 texture pack that makes the game look better than this. You're right.
Layoffs. Reflector Entertainment's debut launched last month. And already they are now laying people off.
Wait, hold up. Oh, they launched last month? Yeah, bro, the 9 is referring to the amount of people that knew this game was coming out. I didn't even know this happened. Check Steam. Okay, I'm going to pull it up right now. So 285 people. Wow. Wait, is this worse than Immortals of Avenum? Oh my... Wait, is it worse than Concord? Is it worse than Dustborn? Okay, it's not that bad. Okay. Jesus. Who are those 3 people? Probably YouTubers that are making a video about the game being bad. This is insane.
Staff members who worked on Unknown 9 Awakening report layoffs across the team at Canadian outfit
I should play the game.
Reflector Entertainment. Jobs lost include roles within Reflector's art, marketing, narrative, and quality assurance teams.
I could see why.
Game developer reported Unknown 9 Awakening launched last month to mixed reviews on Steam, where it sits with a mixed rating. Less than 100 players have rated the game.
Jesus.
The game was also meant to act as a central point for the franchise as a cross-media brand.
Cross-media? Bro, how do people... like, ever since the MCU came out and, like, Marvel did what it did, everybody thinks, like, oh, okay, well, let's just do the same thing. As if Marvel didn't have nearly 100 years of nostalgia and lore and source material to go off of. Like, how do you fucking think this is... like, even DC couldn't do it. I feel like, yeah, and loads of talent. Yes, you have the greatest actors in the world. You have Robert Downey Jr., Chris Hemsworth, fucking Benedict Cumberbatch, or whatever the fuck his name is. These guys are amazing. And you think that you're gonna get, like, the one character in the show that people hated, that they hated it the most because of her, you're gonna have her be the main character? How stupid are you? Like,
this week, a second season of Unknown 9 Out of Sight tie-in podcast was launched, while the 4th issue of its graphic novel series Unknown 9 Torment arrived. There's also a web series, Unknown 9 Passage, which you can go watch on YouTube. We also have a quote that reads, "Unfortunately, I was affected by the layoffs at Reflector Entertainment, which means I'm currently looking for a job as a narrative designer or..."
Bro, I'm gonna be honest, you need to change your resume. If you were involved in this game, just say that you were in jail for committing a felony. Yeah, I think it'll probably look better on your resume than saying that you played this game. Or you made this game. Yeah, say like, yeah, I did an armed robbery and I killed somebody. Oh, okay, good. I was worried you were working on Unknown 9. That's fine. Yeah, come on. Yeah, you're good.
Game writer, if you hear of any opportunities, please let me know. One staff member who lost their job wrote. Eurogamer has contacted Bandai Namco for comment. They also mentioned that the protagonist Haruna was played in the final game by Anya Shalatra, aka Yennefer, in Netflix's The Witcher. And it was the first project from the Montreal-based Reflector, co-founded by former Assassin's Creed Unity creative director Alexandre Amancio. Returning to David Bedard, you may have noticed that he had also worked over at Ubisoft, seemingly Ubisoft Montreal. There's a recurring theme with a lot of these consultation firms like Sweet Baby Inc. and others that they are based out of Canada.
Yeah, they're Canada. We need to have... like, Trump keeps talking about this wall in Mexico. I think the Mexicans are great. Why don't we build the wall up there at Canada? Let's get them the fuck out of here. Yeah, we're building the wrong wall, guys.
Canada. And it does seem like a number of the people working there do indeed have ties back to
Yeah, Mexicans are playing Sparking Zero. They fucking love video games. They're super fans of everything. Meanwhile, Canadian, fuck this, man. They're coming and messing up our games.
A top comment on Arkotaku in Action discussing this news would say, "I would have loved to be a fly on the office wall with the people in charge when the sales numbers for those novels and comic books started coming in." What sales numbers? The response reading, "It's highly regarded. Why don't they do any market research and playtesting? Spend 5 minutes on YouTube and you'll see this is not a winning strategy. Virtue signaling may get you a lot of clicks, but it won't get you sales."
It doesn't even get you a lot of clicks. I didn't even know this game was coming out. If I had known this game was coming out, I'm going to tell you the truth. I would have played it because it's the kind of game that it's bad. And so, like, you can make content about it being bad.
To be quite frank, though, all of this stuff is extremely bizarre. Like, you would imagine that they would care about sales, but then they talk about they being Sweet Baby Inc. employees having been on record talking about wanting to burn the gaming industry to the ground. On top of that, we've seen how a number of these consultation firms and their associates have been grifting off of government money, attempting to use DEI as a way of achieving ESG metrics, which helps them
This is another reason why you had so many DEI initiatives, by the way, is that not only did you have, like, private equity and like, you know, like venture capitalist money that was incentivizing it, but you also had the government that was incentivizing it. So effectively, it was a really good farming strategy. So everybody kept farming that dungeon, but now the dungeon got nerfed because of Trump, and nobody's doing it anymore, and they're closing the dungeons. Yeah, Doge came in and it's gone. Strat got nerfed.
Said funding. It's all extremely bizarre and corrupt, and clearly these people really shouldn't be in the gaming industry. They have no passion for games or gamers. As a matter of fact, lack of passion is an understatement. A lot of these people flat out despise gamers. So let me know what you think about all of that Sweet Baby Inc. and Unknown 9 Awakening stuff.
Fucking
and
funny
we got
to me.
one more thing to take a look at here. As I've had a lot of people tagging me and mentioning the situation in my comments, asking me to cover this, so let's take a look. Ollie Barter had said,
yeah, I almost all the Steam reviews for the game, got the game for free. Wait, really? Let me see. Unknown 9 Steam reviews. Okay. Mixed. Receive product for free. Wait. This guy got it for free, still said it sucked. Oh my... They can't even pay people to like it.
Sony is in talks.
It's bundled with AMD.
And by the way, thank you all for the tags and
They should have bundled it with Intel.
Now let's take a look at what he says here over on Forbes. In a pretty astonishing piece of news, it seems that Sony is in talks to buy Kadokawa. According to Reuters, Sony is thinking of buying Kadokawa, which would have massive ramifications for both games and anime. From a gaming standpoint, the big acquisition would be From Software, of which Kadokawa has a controlling stake as of 2014. Admittedly, Sony already has a small chunk of FromSoft, along with Tencent, but this new setup would put Sony much more directly in charge. Considering Microsoft's recent acquisition of Activision, it makes sense that Sony would go after a company like FromSoft via Kadokawa.
Yeah, of course.
Sony has had a long-standing relationship with FromSoft, going back to the 90s and the original PlayStation, so in theory, this could be a good matchup. However, my only concern with this is that the Japan studio at Sony was gutted recently. Okay, yeah, hold up, let's talk about that really quick. So, back in 2021, yeah, Sony essentially shut down Japan studio. Now, people often meme around with varying levels of seriousness that Sony isn't even a Japanese company any longer. And Sony gutting or shutting down Japan studio, however you want to phrase it, certainly does seem like a symbolic representation of that being the case. They attempted to justify this action by essentially saying that the studio just wasn't profitable enough anymore. And then what did they do a few years later? Get involved with Concord, losing about $400 million. Now,
well, that's not fair. To be fair, they thought Concord was going to be their Guardians of the Galaxy. They thought, oh man, we're going to do Concord and we're going to make like a TV show out of it, and it's going to be like the next cinematic Sony universe. Like, this is going to be like our Overwatch and we're going to do it right. Like, yeah, it just didn't. It was just, they just wasted $400 million. And the holding company that owned the studio that basically owned Concord, I think it was like Firewalk, or, you know, basically, you know, down in a Blaze of Fire Studios, whatever the fuck it is, was actually valued at $1 billion at one point. That's crazy, huh? Wow.
Of course, a lot of stuff has occurred throughout all of this. This is just like a few brief points, but oh my gosh.
I think they received investment
so we left off
at that valuation.
However, my only concern with this is that Japan studio at Sony was gutted recently, and the same thing could happen under Sony to FromSoft. That would obviously be awful. The other side of this is Kadokawa's anime and manga output. Sony already has Crunchyroll and Aniplex, so buying Kadokawa would bring a huge amount of IP across anime and manga under Sony's roof. Kadokawa also has a sizable chunk of the Western anime press.
I didn't even know that.
Having bought Anime News Network and owning Bookwalker, who run GX Plus.
I feel like we're getting close to a, you know.
Yeah, like well, Anime News Network and Sony, they would go perfect together, hand in hand, if you get that joke.
Monopoly.
The joke being Anime News Network's terrible reputation. It's a lot of stuff we could talk about regarding that, but I'm not going to bury the lead at the end. The article would conclude saying, in short, this is a lot to take in and would have a dramatic impact across games and anime, not only in Japan, but also globally. Yeah, so I do think this would be pretty terrible stuff. Sony...
I think a lot of people are worried that anime is going to follow the same trend, and like a lot of these larger corporate Japanese studios are going to follow the same trends that American studios are, by trying to censor and appeal to people that aren't really their audience in order to reach a larger market. That's what I think a lot of people are worried about. Like, am I crazy on this? Yeah, they already are. Exactly. It's definitely worrying. I think a lot of people feel that way.
Have an increasing grip, infesting their hands onto FromSoft even more. And clearly also not a good thing for the anime industry, in my opinion. We'll see how things continue to develop, but let me know what you think about all of this news, the Unknown 9 Awakening stuff and this Sony stuff at the end of this video. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed my coverage, and if you did, please consider liking and or subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.
That is insane. I had no fucking idea this game even came out. I remember hearing that it was coming out, and I was like, oh, this is just probably something that's stupid. And they had an entire cinematic. Let me link you guys the video. This is, I don't know what I would do without these. Like so many of these happen that I can't even keep up with them all now. This is insane. I got 2 free games with my GPU, Unknown and Space Marine 2. Oh, so you got 1 free game then. Yeah, that's crazy. Unknown 9 Awakening. With a 200 player peak. Again, guys, to keep this into context, that's worse than Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. It's worse than Immortals of Avenum. And it's even worse than Concord. Literally unknown. Worse than Concord? Yes. How many millions did it cost? Definitely, I think that we can rest assured that it probably cost more money to make than it made. I think you can pretty much guarantee that. How the fuck? I don't know. I have no idea how you do that. $70 to $100 million. I could see it be a massive, massive amount of money that they spent on it. And, well, that's what you get. That's what you fucking get. You make a shitty game like that, nobody buys it. Blaming Sweet Baby is reaching. I don't think Sweet Baby... I think this game sucked from the beginning, and Sweet Baby just got invited in to make it worse. I think it's like, basically, Sweet Baby, they're not the Antichrist. They're just simply the horsemen of the apocalypse. They signify that the apocalypse is coming, but it's really the Antichrist that does it. Like, that's it. They're more like an omen or something like that, right? The Harbinger. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's the Silver Surfer and the Herald, the Messenger. Exactly. I think it's so fucking ridiculous. I can't imagine thinking that you're going to build an entire cinematic universe like this. I hope that this is the last cinematic universe that we see. I think that if you have a cinematic universe that you're cooking right now, just abort it. Abort it. Stop it. You're not Marvel. You're never going to be Marvel. Stop it. I don't know what you're thinking. Unless it's Sonic, yes. Yeah, just stop doing it. So Black Myth Wukong, it feels very weird. The negativity that is towards like Black Myth Wukong, I feel is some of the most forced and confusing shit that I've seen.
Now, ever so often, there's a game that comes out that meets and exceeds the expectations of the players. It blows our minds. It's so good, but for some odd reason, it doesn't meet the same expectations for games media. Our interests aren't aligned. Our perspectives are not necessarily the same, and there's conflict in that. And I think that Black Myth Wukong is one of those games. And don't get me wrong, the game reviewed very well. It got over an 80 on most review sites. But with that said, up until the game's release, and then even after the game's release, it was under a constant barrage of negative criticism. It had nothing to do with the game whatsoever. And in that, the game never really got a fair shake. At least not.
Well, it didn't get a fair shake, and it was obvious that it didn't. And a lot of the reviews that people gave for Black Myth Wukong contextualized the review alongside a slanderous article that was proven to be false that defamed the company that made the game, with proven lies that they never issued a correction or a retraction from.
In my eyes, now, 2024 has been an absolutely insane year for games. There are so many great games to play, and if you're one of those people that are out there that are like, gaming is dying, let me be the first to tell you, you need to
a fucking idiot. It's not dying. It is one of the best years for gaming that we've ever had.
Play more games, or just not the same ones over and over again. The list, once I get into some of the Game of the Year contenders, it's going to blow your mind, because I honestly forgot how many games even came out this year.
Yeah, it's fucking insane. People are talking about like anti-China sentiment. I think that where is the anti-China sentiment with Genshin Impact with those same people? It's not there. So I don't think that's really true.
Year. This isn't about the award. It's about the recognition that these studios deserve, the reward they deserve beyond just making money. It's making sure that it's known why these games are great so that other publishers and studios can see, hey, this is what it is. This is how we make a game that the players love. And it's not, again, just not the money. But already I'm starting to see games media want to preemptively push back about Black Myth Wukong being in the Game of the Year category, and we're going to talk about that. Before that, today's sponsor.
Yeah, of course, right? I mean, like, I think it's a huge issue. Riot's American company got bought by Tencent. Yeah, true. It's about jealousy. I think that people are just trying to shit on this, and I guarantee you other publishers and studios are researching market and not looking at Game Awards. I think that that's true, but it's also fair to look at the Game Awards and see how it happens that's biased, and then call that out, because I think it's bad.
War Thunder is a massive free-to-play, large-scale multiplayer game where you can fight anyone from around the world using ground vehicles, aircraft, helicopters, and naval vessels from the mid-20th century to present. The game is available on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. What truly sets War Thunder apart is its commitment to realism and immersion. The graphics and sound design continually evolve, pulling you into battles that feel authentically intense. You're not just playing.
The most expensive tank in the pay-to-win track for War Thunder is a tank from Israel. And I think that any American player that plays War Thunder should get that tank for free, since we actually paid for it with our tax dollars.
A game, you're experiencing the heart-pounding chaos of combat. Whether you're barreling through enemy lines in a tank, providing crucial air support, or engaging in thrilling dogfights, the freedom to choose your combat style is up to you. The game features various technologies such as night vision devices, smoke screens, and even nuclear explosions, which can turn the tide of battle in unexpected ways. A recent update called Dance of Dragons is a game changer. Thanks to this update, you can now take command of a variety of French combat vessels and take control of two iconic American aircraft, the A-10 Thunderbolt II attack plane and the F-111 tactical bomber. In addition, there are many other combat vehicles that are available and dozens of improvements at the request of the community. So are you ready to join the fight? Download War Thunder today for free using the link in the pinned comment or description below. If you're a new player or returning after a long break, you'll score some exclusive rewards. Rentals for the P-40E-1 aircraft and M4 tank, unique skins, and 100,000 silver lions. Don't miss out. Thank you, War Thunder, for sponsoring this video. We have had a monstrous year in games, and it's wild to think that it's not even over yet, with more releases right around the corner. This is about the time of year that Game of the Year candidates are being discussed and debated, and this year we have a lot of difficult choices to make. Dragon's Dogma 2, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth...
Dragon's Dogma 2 is not even remotely in the running for Game of the Year. The game has so many flaws, and it's so problematic. No, it's not even remotely close.
Helldivers 2, Paper Mario, The Thousand
Helldivers 2, not even remotely close.
Year Door, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, Persona 3
Definitely not Game of the Year. Prince of Persia was good, but is not Game of the Year.
Reloaded, Metaphor ReFantazio, and Silent Hill 2 Remake are among the highest scoring games that we've had from reviewers this year. That's 8 games when only 6 games can be qualified as candidates. We're not even mentioning the stockpile of games that were scored just under that, with titles like Stellar Blade, Black Myth Wukong, Tekken 8, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, Unicorn Overlord, Space Marine 2, and more. 2024 has been packed with games, but only a few titles are deserving of being crowned King of the Year. And for many players, that game is Black Myth Wukong. James Throtton of The Gamer penned an article...
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, guys. I think Black Myth Wukong is Game of the Year, and I don't even think anything else is remotely close. I do. I think it's just so far and away better. It's like, and it's the reason why is that it's not one thing, it's everything. It's that the combat is really good, the storytelling is really good, the graphics are really good, the cinematics are really good, like the voice acting is really good. Everything about it is S tier.
Titled, if Black Myth Wukong isn't nominated for Game of the Year, fans are going to be insufferable.
James, I love how the implication there is that the fans are the ones that are in the wrong, not the people. Like, what is the logic? So, if all of the people that are saying that this game should be Game of the Year, why exactly does that happen? I don't even understand that. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. So, like, it's like, yeah, we're the ones that are insufferable. Maybe it's you.
Right. Black Myth Wukong is a very good action game, taking the Souls-like formula and stretching it into a boss rush format. Its popularity even surpasses that of its inspirations, garnering millions of players in mere days. It's a genuine contender for the Game Awards, but with how stacked 2024 is shaping up to be, competition is fierce. Polygon recently updated its Game of the Year frontrunner list, while the Golden Joystick Awards announced its 6 nominees for this year's PC and console Game of the Year categories. Black Myth Wukong is nowhere to be seen outside of smaller categories, and so TikTok right now is a deluge of angry gamers declaring that games media is corrupt and that it's all a part of some wider conspiracy.
I think it is. I think that's exactly what's happening. I think that Black Myth Wukong is indicated, and I'm just going to say it straight out. I think that's exactly what's happening, and it's evident to any person with a brain. You have a games media hegemony of people that all behave and have the exact same opinions, that all cross-reference each other for some form of credibility, and they've all collectively gotten together and tried to push a false narrative that Black Myth Wukong is a mediocre game and that the studio that makes it is sexist. This is ridiculous. And for me to think that that's not a factor, or that, like, this just randomly happened, it's insulting to the intelligence of any person that is, like, reading this. Yes, it absolutely is a deluge of angry gamers, because that's exactly what it is. It is a conspiracy. They're not giving it to them. It's the same reason why the conspiracy was to give this game an 8. It's not an 8. This game's easily a 9 or a 10. To say that the game had no women representation? Yeah, because you didn't get to part 4. It's unbelievable. Yeah, people think it's part of a conspiracy. That's because it is.
The game was not rigged from the start. It's just been a very, very competitive year.
You have to keep in mind that IGN rated Black Myth Wukong, I think, an 8, and it rated Dragon Age Veilguard a 9. It is a conspiracy. It's happening, and it's right in front of you. And Concord is 7. It's happening right in front of you. Everybody can see it, and you're made to feel like a fool whenever you see what's in plain sight. It's absolutely happening. Sorry. It's just truth.
Wider conspiracy. The game was not rigged from the start. It's just been a very, very competitive year. This week alone, we've had Silent Hill 2 Remake, Metaphor ReFantazio, and Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, 3 critically acclaimed hits that are all vying for the spotlight with equal fervor. Earlier this year, we saw the launch of Astro Bot, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, Tekken 8, Helldivers 2, and Dragon's Dogma. That's not to mention...
If you think that Dragon's Dogma should be in the running for Game of the Year over Black Myth Wukong, you are retarded. That's it. Like, there's no other way to look at it.
In the stellar year it's been for indies. Black Myth Wukong, while good, we scored it 4 stars, just doesn't measure up to the great.
We scored it 4 stars. I love how they always like referencing back to their own scoring, as if this is some sort of like indication of credibility. Yeah, we're not biased because if you look at our previous bias, it will reinforce our current one. It's so ridiculous. I really like Dragon's Dogma 2. I did as well, but I know that it's not Game of the Year. Also, think about, again, that Stellar Blade wasn't mentioned here either.
For indies. Black Myth Wukong, while good...
It's an obvious bias, and any normal person, any logical, reasonable person can see that.
Scored it 4 stars, just doesn't measure up to the greats. Hell, it's not even the best Souls-like this year, as that award goes to Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. For those that have used Wukong as fuel in a culture war since before it was even released, its absence on these lists is an attack.
It absolutely is. And the people that used it in the culture war were the journalists that slandered the company based off of their misunderstanding of the Chinese language. That's exactly what happened. Any normal person can see that. I'm sorry, but like, it's obviously happening. It wasn't misunderstanding. It was proven. And, well, actually, no, that's true. It was deliberate.
Ploy by Games Media for reasons, even though it has an open critic aggregate of 82. There's one big argument cropping up across Reddit and slowly replacing all the goth girls on my For You page as to why it deserves to be nominated. It sold well. James, I will speak for those that you are arguing against. Black Myth Wukong doesn't deserve to be nominated because of its sales. It deserves to be nominated because it is the first ever release from a studio, an inexperienced studio, that made a stunningly gorgeous game with great combat, a compelling story, beautiful music, incredibly detailed and culturally accurate environments, some of the most unique boss encounters I've seen in a game like this, and themes that we don't often see in games. It was original, fresh, and most importantly, fun. And while many of the games that were mentioned in this article are incredible games, they are just copies of previous titles or even remakes. The industry...
I personally think that remakes and DLC shouldn't be able to win Game of the Year. This is just like my own personal 2 cents, so everybody's going to have their own opinion on it, but I don't think that DLC and remakes should win Game of the Year. I don't think it's fair.
Should be celebrating and rewarding studios that work this hard, take a risk, and deliver something altogether new. And we're not even mentioning how the game sold at a fair price. I am so exhausted by this. Do you want to know why players think there's some grand conspiracy? Do you want to know why?
Why does everybody think this? Maybe the reason why everybody thinks it is because it's true. Has it ever occurred to you that maybe when everybody collectively comes to a conclusion of something, that maybe there could be some reason why they think this is happening? $60 is a fair price. Absolutely, it's a fair price for a game. It's the same price that was in 2005.
They think there's some media bias. Well, you're not doing yourself any service when you try to minimize the game at every given turn. Called it a Souls-like. It's not even a Souls-like. I actually did the same thing in a video too, so I'm actually not going to take points away from you for that. But I don't understand where this idea that this game somehow became something that the culture war LARPers had latched onto even before its release, because to my recollection, the only thing that I can remember is Games Media were the ones that were pushing these allegations from IGN against Game Science through different articles, and then also at the exact same time, there were a ton of people...
And they were unsubstantiated allegations that referenced and referred to unknown sources in nondescript ways to make them seem like they were more valid and important than they were.
Pining over tweets that were completely mistranslated. If anything, it was games media that was dragging this game into the culture war, not the other way around.
Yeah.
It's just not true.
Yeah, nobody was talking about this game being woke or anything like that, or like anti-woke, anything like that, like before they put out those articles. Nobody was thinking about that. It's the same thing as about how they talked about how the game, like, do you guys remember the reviews about how, like, the game didn't have any women in it? As if, like, by the way, having women in the game is some sort of indicator of quality. What a retarded premise to begin with. But on top of that, the only thing that showed me is that all the reviewers that played this game didn't actually beat the game because they never saw the full story of the game. They only played probably the first chapter and then they quit it. It's just like, it's so brain dead and just, of course people are going to be thinking this is part of a culture war because they were the ones that started attacking it. That's the reason why. They're just mad that people didn't buy their bullshit hit piece on the game being sexist. Yeah, I think so too. Was there also the Game Science turned down Sweet Baby money too? I don't think that's accurate.
The entire time before this game's release, and this is the reason why I say the game didn't get a fair shake, is that every single time this game was brought up, it was always with a qualifier.
Yeah.
Black Myth Wukong is a fantastic action game, but there was this report from IGN that was also based on some mistranslations, but we don't really care about that much. But anyway, they said
there were some people that reviewed it and contextualized their review around it. And so, no women in Failguard either. So they can't define what a woman is. Yeah. Crazy people can't just enjoy the game without inserting politics into it. Yeah. I think this is a huge issue. And I will be doing a... I'll tell you guys this. So I said that I was going to do this, and I never did it. The Shame Awards. So what are the Shame Awards? I will be completely transparent. I didn't do it because of my relation with like OTK, Mad Mushroom, and everything. They thought it might make us look bad. Problem solved. So now we're doing it. And so now what we're going to be doing is we are going to be looking at the worst representation, worst graphics, most garbage performance, you know, biggest Mary Sue character. And we are doing this by the end of the year. I am very fucking excited. It's good. Yep, it's very, very good.
Some things, or they do some things that we
Somebody
don't necessarily
needs to do
agree
this.
with. Black Myth Wukong, we're giving an 8 out of 10, but just to let you know, we saw some tweets that were also mistranslated, and we didn't really like exactly what they said or the things that this company stands for. It was always like that. The game never got a fair chance, at least in the media light. And that's not the same for...
No, they never gave it a fair chance. Absolutely not. And you see this all the time. So, like, here's a great example. When Jesse Ventura ran for governor of, I believe, Minnesota, they introduced him as a former wrestler rather than a politician, or rather than any of his other jobs. And there are always these ways that media uses to delegitimize and make people less valid. And it's like these like really soft like changes in vocabulary that the average person can't detect and can't see. Yeah, former Navy SEAL or something like that. No, yeah, like a former wrestler. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? And so, and it's very obvious that this happens. And I find this to be a huge problem. And I'll tell you guys, I hate media. I absolutely hate them. I think that they are 100% against the will of the people. I think that they exist as a parasite. And 9 times out of 10, they make the world worse and not better. I hate them. They're scummy as fuck. Absolutely. And it's true with games media. It's true with political media. It's true with all media. Former minor. Yeah, there's another one. Like, I don't think that there is enough... I don't think that there is enough vitriol for the amount of just obvious propaganda and lies that they put out all the time.
every other game that was out there. All the rest of the games never had any of this
is the
kind
same
of stuff.
thing.
And the worst part is again, all of these things were alleged, never even proven, yet they were touted as fact. They were included in game reviews.
Well, they were alleged also, by the way, they were alleged by anonymous sources. So it's not only, it's not only that, oh, this might have not happened, it's also that we don't even know who said it.
Game review videos, end reviews. You don't think that's too far? What do you think is the purpose of that when you put that stuff into an article other than to minimize the game and hopefully steer players away from buying it?
That's their goal.
That's the point.
Yeah.
You want to understand and know why players think there's some grand conspiracy?
Because
it's not hard for them to jump to that conclusion when it's staring them.
Well, it's right there. Yeah, it's not jumping to conclusion. We've been fucking Ubered there by the people themselves.
2 inches from their face. On the topic of the game's sales, the writer continues with, it's hardly a compelling defense, but sales figures have long been used as evidence that supposedly anti-woke games like Wukong are what your everyday gamer really wants. In reality, it was a success because the game was marketed to the enormous untapped Chinese demographic.
Well, we all have to keep in mind that Chinese players and video game people are only weighted as 3/5 of an American player or a Western player. They're not a full entire gamer. So you shouldn't really think about Chinese gamers the same as Western gamers. They're separate, but they're not equal. Sorry.
It was only made worse when streamers were supposedly sent guidelines asking them not to mention feminist propaganda or politics. Black Myth Wukong became the poster child for the most toxic, vocal gamers on the internet, and everything since its launch has only worked to further that image.
Another funny thing about that is that if this retard knew anything about the way that China works, the reason why you're not supposed to mention feminist propaganda or politics is because a lot of times China has those restrictions on companies themselves because they restrict speech in China in a very large way. And those restrictive speech expectations were translated to a marketing agency, and it wasn't westernized. So if this person actually knew anything about the culture that they're trying to understand or actually really completely slander in this case, they would know that the reason why this happened actually had nothing to do with the game, and it had everything to do with the company just doing this out of an abundance of caution.
So, what's your favorite part about working at NAV Canada?
Being in the air traffic control tower, you can't beat that view.
Ironically, no aviation experience required. They even pay you to train.
A great job to boost your finances.
This job really does pay the bills, you know?
I've got one. If you're really looking for your career to take off, apply.
What the hunk are you waiting for? Oh, is that too much? Okay, I think we got it.
What is going on, guys? In today's video, I will rank every single weapon combination in Throne and Liberty. So this game has a lot of different weapons and combinations to play and choose from. But the big question is, what are the best and most popular builds / combinations? I've done a bunch of testing and here are the results. So first off, we have the longbow and staff, and we will place it right in the A tier. This setup is a glass cannon that deals huge amount of damage from long range by maximizing our passives and items. You will need to manage your cooldowns effectively, but if you follow the right build and instructions, then you will be melting anyone that stands in your way. If you play this setup, then I recommend for you to try not to move around too much, so that the rapid fire stance and asceticism procs would give us the highest damage possible. Then as well, in whatever your main rotation is, make sure that you cast the focused firebombs and hellfire rain as much as possible to upkeep the burn stacks. And if you're interested in any of these builds, then feel free to check out my channel for their full build guides. Then for the first S tier, we have Wand and Staff. This is the most versatile healer setup in the game because you can heal while also doing great amount of DPS, as our weapon combination has stronger and more spammable AoE abilities than any other healer combo, so this makes her preferred when farming in the open world and dungeons. If you enjoy traditional mage DPS builds but also want to heal and support allies, then this is the one for you. Next we have Sword and Shield with Dagger, and he deserves to be placed in the C tier. This setup is an agile evasion tank with amazing AoE damage. We will be incredibly tanky thanks to skills like Counter Barrier, while also being able to dish out big damage with Cleaving Moonlight and Thundercloud's bombing. Overall, this build has high CC, really good mobility, high AoE DPS, and most importantly, low cooldowns. So if you want to be an evasion tank that can hold enemies aggro, but also do decent amount of DPS, then this is the build for you. Then for the next S tier, we have Crossbow and Dagger. This is currently the highest DPS setup in the game because both of your weapons have extremely high damage, and if you use the right build, then you will consistently reach 20 stacks of Thunderclouds, which will give you explosive damage. And you can activate this every few seconds. Crossbow and daggers are both unique weapons because they are dual wielded. What makes dual wielding so unique is that for every attack you do with these weapons, there's a chance to get double hit with their offhand. And on top of that, you can even increase the chance of this by using the Selfless Diffusion, which will increase your damage by 2 or even 4 times. Next we have Greatsword and Dagger, which also deserves to be in the S tier. At first, this build may seem like just another bruiser, however, thanks to passive skills like Vital Force and Cold Warrior, its damage output can be very high. Greatsword and Dagger revolves around rotating your buffs into your DPS skills. Daggers have higher attack speed, so keeping them out may allow you to get additional attacks off in between skills, while the Greatsword skills will keep you protected and give you the best buff in the game. Also, even though most players prefer to stack as much HP as possible because of the Vital Force, we'll still be increasing our damage while getting more tankier at the same time. So, if you want to be a melee assassin with the most popular weapon in the game, the Greatsword, then this is the one for you. Next up we have Longbow and Crossbow, and he deserves to be in the A tier. Because of high bonus damage stacking and these two weapons having the ability to throw out a massive number of hits, the Longbow and Crossbow players are among the best. Also, by building up from your skills and passives, you'll get low cooldowns and have a very high amount of hit chance, ensuring that you can keep doing DPS for a very long time. The main goal of this build and your skill rotation is to use few skills to increase our damage and cast time. So if you want to play a build that is similar to a machine gun, then this is the one for you. Then for the next A tier, we have Staff and Dagger. This setup is a mage assassin that at his full potential provides up to 200 heavy attack chance and 150 skill damage boost. But because of the high cooldowns in this build, you'll need plenty of cooldown speed to reach your full potential. And without it, you'll be not as good. So this setup is amazing, but will require decent enough gear to reach the highest damage possible. This build has insane amount of high single target burst damage, and its main playstyle will revolve around maintaining 10 burning stacks and 20 thundercloud stacks, which will provide exceptional AoE and single target DPS. So if you're looking... What is going on, guys? In today's video, I will rank and shield with Greatsword. This setup will focus on utilizing the strengths of both of these weapons for a ton of HP and heavy attack chance. Next we have Sword and Shield with Wand, and he is also in the B tier. I like to call this build as the Paladin setup. This one is very unique in the sense that we are going to be a tank that can heal at the same time. If you're playing in a group with a healer, then just focus on defending teammates and healing yourself. But if you're not solo or in a group without a healer, then just focus on tanking while healing the guys that are the lowest HP. So if you're ready to not even feel the enemy hits and still have the ability to heal and do great damage, then this is the build for you. Then for one of the last B tiers, we have Staff and Crossbow. This build will work by spamming skills like Quickfire and Fireball Barrage right when they come off cooldown. But as we're high spam and high damage, so we will need a lot of mana regen as well. And that's why you'll want to use skills like Inner Peace and Mana Exchange. If you're ready to stack high dexterity, cooldown speed, and bonus damage to achieve super high DPS, then this is the build for you. Then for the next C tier, we have Wand and Dagger. This setup is a support build that can still do big damage and is more oriented towards mixing melee and ranged playstyles. By us combining a mixture of survivability and damage with skills like Thundercloud's bombing and swift healing, we will be able to do both, so deal big damage.
What is up, ladies and gents? It's Guitars562 with a guide on how to clear the Island of Terror. Now, this boss is not the same as the Tyrants, but it is similar. First tip, Tank will be aggroing the boss, but remember that he hits extremely harder than the normal dungeon. He will shoot 4 fireballs, and after the 4th one, he will stun the tank guaranteed. So if you have a party member that can cleanse, such as a longbow user with Purify, not Nature's Blessing, Purify, you can allow the tank to free himself so he can block the next mechanic. If you don't, he will have to eat the heavy attack, and unless your tank has 15,000 HP, it will be cutting it close to not get killed every single time. Second mech, he will do a pulsing heavy attack. When you see this pulse, it means you can do a normal block or a movement block. If you don't already know, if you stand still and block, it creates a stationary block. But if you press any directional key and block, it will create a movement block, which is good to know for the next mechanic. Fun tip I do for myself is I count to 3, then block after the pulses stop. Third mechanic, you will see a diamond or square purple heavy attack, and you cannot do a stationary block, otherwise you will get hit. You need to do a movement block, but know this as well. Anytime you do a movement block or a stationary block, immediately do your retaliation attack. Otherwise, if you have to block again, you will not be able to. Instead, if Tank loses aggro for whatever reason, he will do consistent heavy attacks back to back, and there's nothing you can do but block. And if you don't burn your counter move, you will try to block again instinctively, and then unfortunately it will do a counter instead of block and you will get hit. Otherwise, without 10,000 HP, you're probably going to die. Fourth mechanic, he will repeat the stationary block for you to do in fireball sequence. This is where it gets a little complex. For the fourth mechanic, there are 3 fireballs that land randomly. To control the RNG, all players need to stand near a vent so the fireball lands into the vent. That doesn't mean get hit by the fireball, but stand there morphed and ready to run out the second you see the fireball. This is for players that have good ping or are comfortable dodging. However, if you have terrible luck or low HP, you can wait for the fireball to land and then run into the fire to get a simple burn stack. You see, the fireball or burn stack is necessary because the vent will be covered up in smoke. You use the burn or fireball to clear the vents, allowing you to use the geyser for the 5th mechanic. If you do not clear the vents, you will not be able to see the geyser, and if you have the geyser mech, you will not be able to use it if it chooses the geyser that's in the smoke. Even if it's partially cleansed, it needs to be fully cleansed. How do you clear the vent with burn stacks? Easy. Just run over the flame and careful not to linger, because you can go from 1 burn stack to 3 more quickly, and it only lasts 6 seconds. So use the seconds to run around vents to clear, but be mindful because after fireballs, the boss will do another heavy attack, so keep your eye on the boss and be ready while cleansing. After the fireball mechanic, lizards will spawn. Personally, in my group after fireballs, we stack mid or center of boss to bunch up the lizards and kill the ads with AoE moves, and use the wand user's area of effect heal so no damage is really taken. After 2 heavy attacks, the boss will go into geysers. Important information to note is that after the second block, if he does hit you, you will have a movement speed debuff if you survive. So try not to get hit, because if you do and you have that debuff, you will try to run to geysers with a movement speed reduction that will make it tough and completely impossible. It's possible, but unlikely. Moving on to the 5th mechanic, geysers. You have to go to the chosen geyser that is bubbling. I repeat, if any geyser that is chosen is not cleansed, the vent will not work and it's a game wipe. If you do clear, it will be the same as before, and then you go back to DPS. The only difference is there will only be 1 vent that works. After 2 more heavy attacks after the geysers, the boss will go into the hardest phase, the 6th mechanic, which is the rat phase. This phase is by far the hardest mechanic because of timing. For North American players, ping will be your worst nightmare here. Do not run out of the circle. Do not dig right away because you will be stunned. Do not run to cleanse right away because it will cause a wipe, as you see here. Do not try to pass the orbs, because if you get hit by one, you get hit by a fear that lasts a long time. What you actually do is run a slight distance away to space away from each other to clearly see who is going to be aggroed by the boss, and everyone will have to eat the first initial hit. The boss will do a shockwave causing around, depending on your defense, it can either hit for 2,500, 3,000 or more. The point is, it will do a shock hit, it will stun you and hit you with a movement speed debuff that lasts about 20 seconds. After the boss hits everyone, the boss will target a rat. Everyone needs to be above ground for this to work. Nobody needs to be at all in the ground whatsoever. As the boss goes to bite the first person, that person needs to dig as he bites. Too late and he eats you. So it needs to be perfect. He will continue to do this in sequence to the other nearby rats that are above ground until everyone has successfully digged or dug. He will keep doing this. Once everyone has successfully dug, he will have a temporary stun, allowing players to go to their plant to cleanse. This is the only way you can beat this mechanic. At 50% and below, he will always do 2 geysers. Sometimes it happens at 50% and sometimes at 46, so be ready. Because if you don't have enough stamina, you will not be able to glide far enough to reach the second geyser. Having a salvation chain staff user in the group to save teammates is helpful here. Lastly, I didn't think I needed to mention this, but rat phase after 50% is the same as before. The only difference is he is invisible. But for the sake of keeping you informed, here you go. Pay attention to his shadow to know where he is going. I'm extra sweaty, so I get close to him and pay attention to his first initial stomp. As the first to go in, but that's just me. Anyway, a fire tip to share is that if someone digs early, it's completely fine. Don't panic. As long as someone comes up after the 5th bite when he stands up. And it's extremely specific that you have to wait for him to stand up. Otherwise, he will bite you again and kill you immediately. So one person or all people can jump out the second they see that he stood up. He will either push back everyone again and afterwards stun himself, or just glitch out and stun himself. Island of Terror. Now this boss is not the same as the tyrants, but it is similar. First tip, tank will be aggroing the boss, but remember that he hits extremely harder than the normal dungeon. He will shoot 4 fireballs, and after the 4th one, he will stun the tank guaranteed. So if you have a party member that can cleanse, such as a longbow user with Purify, not Nature's Blessing, Purify, you can allow the tank to free himself so he can block the next mechanic. If you don't, he will have to eat the heavy attack, and unless your tank has 15,000 HP, it will be cutting it close to not get killed every single time. Second mech, he will do a pulsing heavy attack. When you see this pulse, it means you can do a normal block or a movement block. If you don't already know, if you stand still and block, it creates a stationary block. But if you press any directional key and block, it will create a movement block, which is good to know for the next mechanic. Fun tip I do for myself is I count to 3, then block after the pulses stop. Third mechanic, you will see a diamond or square purple heavy attack, and you cannot do a stationary block, otherwise you will get hit. You need to do a movement block, but know this as well. Anytime you do a movement block or a stationary block, immediately do your retaliation attack. Otherwise, if you have to block again, you will not be able to. Instead, if tank loses aggro for whatever reason, he will do consistent heavy attacks back to back, and there's nothing you can do but block. And if you don't burn your counter move, you will try to block again instinctively, and then unfortunately it will do a counter instead of block and you will get hit. Otherwise, without 10,000 HP, you're probably going to die. Fourth mechanic, he will repeat the stationary block for you to do in fireball sequence. This is where it gets a little complex. For the fourth mechanic, there are 3 fireballs that land randomly. To control the RNG, all players need to stand near a vent so the fireball lands into the vent. That doesn't mean get hit by the fireball, but stand there morphed and ready to run out the second you see the fireball. This is for players that have good ping or are comfortable dodging. However, if you have terrible luck or low HP, you can wait for the fireball to land and then run into the fire to get a simple burn stack. You see, the fireball or burn stack is necessary because the vent will be covered up in smoke. You use the burn or fireball to clear the vents, allowing you to use the geyser for the 5th mechanic. If you do not clear the vents, you will not be able to see the geyser, and if you have the geyser mech, you will not be able to use it if it chooses the geyser that's in the smoke. Even if it's partially cleansed, it needs to be fully cleansed. How do you clear the vent with burn stacks? Easy. Just run over the flame and careful not to linger, because you can go from 1 burn stack to 3 more quickly and it only lasts 6 seconds. So use the seconds to run around vents to clear, but be mindful because after fireballs, the boss will do another heavy attack, so keep your eye on the boss and be ready while cleansing. After the fireball mechanic, lizards will spawn. Personally, in my group after fireballs, we stack mid or center of boss to bunch up the lizards and kill the ads with AoE moves and use the wand user's area of effect heal so no damage is really taken. After 2 heavy attacks, the boss will go into geysers. Important information to note is that after the second block, if he does hit you, you will have a movement speed debuff if you survive. So try not to get hit, because if you do and you have that debuff, you will try to run to geysers with a movement speed reduction that will make it tough and completely impossible. It's possible, but unlikely. Moving on to the 5th mechanic, geysers. You have to go to the chosen geyser that is bubbling. I repeat, if any geyser that is chosen is not cleansed, the vent will not work and it's a game wipe. If you do clear, it will be the same as before, and then you go back to DPS. The only difference is there will only be one vent that works. After 2 more heavy attacks after the geysers, the boss will go into the hardest phase, the 6th mechanic, which is the rat phase. This phase is by far the hardest mechanic because of timing. For North American players, ping will be your worst nightmare here. Do not run out of the circle. Do not dig right away because you will be stunned. Do not run to cleanse right away because it will cause a wipe, as you see here. Do not try to pass the orbs, because if you get hit by one, you get hit by a fear that lasts a long time. What you actually do is run a slight distance away to space away from each other to clearly see who is going to be aggroed by the boss, and everyone will have to eat the first initial hit. The boss will do a shockwave causing around, depending on your defense, it can either hit for 2,500, 3,000 or more. The point is, it will do a shock hit, it will stun you and hit you with a movement speed debuff that lasts about 20 seconds. After the boss hits everyone, the boss will target a rat. Everyone needs to be above ground for this to work. Nobody needs to be at all in the ground whatsoever. As the boss goes to bite the first person, that person needs to dig as he bites. Too late and he eats you. So it needs to be perfect. He will continue to do this in sequence to the other nearby rats that are above ground until everyone has successfully digged or dug. He will keep doing this. Once everyone has successfully dug, he will have a temporary stun, allowing players to go to their plant to cleanse. This is the only way you can beat this mechanic. At 50% and below, he will always do 2 geysers. Sometimes it happens at 50% and sometimes at 46, so be ready. Because if you don't have enough stamina, you will not be able to glide far enough to reach the second geyser. Having a salvation chain staff user in the group to save teammates is helpful here. Lastly, I didn't think I needed to mention this, but rat phase after 50% is the same as before. The only difference is he is invisible. But for the sake of keeping you informed, here you go. Pay attention to his shadow to know where he is going. I'm extra sweaty, so I get close to him and pay attention to his first initial stomp. As the first to go in, but that's just me. Anyway, a fire tip to share is that if someone digs early, it's completely fine. Don't panic. As long as someone comes up after the 5th bite when he stands up. And it's extremely specific that you have to wait for him to stand up. Otherwise, he will bite you again and kill you immediately. So one person or all people can jump out the second they see that he stood up. He will either push back everyone again and afterwards stun himself, or just glitch out and stun himself. Some say it's a time-based mechanic. From my experience, it seems that way, but if you get 6 bites, that's all you need and enough time to move forward. But if you get 5, cheese it the way I did here. Save everyone and the entire run. Otherwise, boom, everyone is dead. For some reason, he bugs out after the 5th because he can't decide whether to explode everyone or stun himself. The last helpful tip for this dungeon, please do not drop below 30% at any point in this dungeon. That is the benchmark. If you block and are below 30, that is fine, but anytime you are walking around the boss or fighting the boss, never drop below 30%. That's pretty much it, guys. Please hit that subscribe button, and as always, guys, stay blessed.
Hey guys, Vulnerable here. I've decided to make you guys a full in-depth guide when it comes to Island of Terror. This is going to be definitely aimed towards tanking. I'll be giving a lot of tips when it comes towards tanking this dungeon. There's definitely a few tips and tricks when it comes to tanking this dungeon and how to pull certain mob packs so you don't get kicked from your pug dungeon group or you don't make your friends mad. So yeah, Island of Terror, also known as Kritaki, is the first dungeon you'll see on the tier 2 section over here. You mainly get access to your chest pieces when it comes to the different 4 sets. For example, I'm using 4 set Wraith at the moment, so it is pretty strong, these sets here, depending on what weapons you're using. You also get a few accessories here, depending on your build, can be decent, can be good, and a few other rewards, like of course your dimensional soul shards to make your tier 2 weapons, and some parchments over here, etc. Alright, so let's begin. One thing I need to mention before starting this dungeon, the one necessary thing you will really need, especially early on when you just get to this dungeon, is a bow player that has cleanse. There is a mini boss and the main boss Kritaki at the end that needs a cleanse ability on whoever gets targeted by a certain ability, which I'll go over later. Make sure you have a bow player in your group with the cleanse ability. Alright guys, this is a skip here. So to start off with, you come through the dungeon, you take a right here, you fly down all the way down to these stairs here. The tank will then aggro these 3 mobs, so then the DPS and the healer can go activate that brazier right over there. After this, you're going to have all the ads on you, and you're going to teleport out to reset the ads. And you're going to come down here on the right side and follow this exact path so you don't aggro any mobs. If you do aggro any mobs, teleport out and reset. After this, you're going to be fighting the first mini boss. There's nothing to it. Basically, just the tank grabs aggro over here and pushes him over here so you don't aggro any other mobs by accident. After this, he does one mechanic where he goes invis, he attacks you multiple times. Tank just splits off with the boss and blocks, basically. Alright, so this part is pretty hard for the tanks. I would say it's probably the hardest pull. But basically follow my instructions. You take a right over here, you avoid the mobs in the middle, but you take all the mobs, you aggro these off the NPC basically. So you grab all these packs of mobs, pop a defensive if you need to, make sure you aggro.
Comment il en a pris 2?
Yeah, put more defensives, start running to the right over here and basically start kiting these mobs. The idea is you're trying to get the mobs away from the NPCs so the NPC can do their objective. Once the mobs are away from the NPCs, they will start channeling their objective. So after you've noticed that you've pulled all the mobs away from the NPCs and you've done your job, teleport out and reset. You will then go take a left through the same gate you went through to begin with, and you're going to meet up with your buddies. Now you'll meet the second mini boss.
J'aime pas l'histoire de téléporter.
Basically, the mention is he will jump over somewhere else and send out these fiery lines. Make sure to preemptively jump over these lines to not die. After this, you will go to a geyser. It will launch up this guy, fly across to the next area. Alright, next, just pull these 2 mobs and kill them. Then take a left over here to avoid the mobs in the middle, and you will pull the second mini boss. This mini boss basically is where you will need the first instance of the cleanse on the bow. The tank will push him in the pillar because the boss has a mechanic that will charge you, and if he's in the pillar, he will hit the pillar all the time. As you'll see here, someone lights up, gets behind the pillar here, it breaks the pillar, and then the bow cleanses him and it boss charges at the second pillar. The reason you break these pillars with the charge is to basically reduce damage from his big AoE attack over here, as you'll see here. Make sure tanks pop Starwater Bastion to minimize damage on your group. Alright guys, so you've reached the final boss of the dungeon, Kritaki. There are some mechanics I'll be going over here, but the main mechanics you need to know is the rat phase, the meteor phase, and the geyser phase. I'll be going over some tips and tricks when it comes to this fight as well, so listen up. So if you are the party lead, you can basically place the same pins I'm doing right here, 1 to 4 with the blue pins on the inactive geysers. This will help, especially if you're in comms, when it comes to the geyser mechanic. And for everyone else and the party lead, make sure you put a personal pin on a respected flower. Basically, everyone before the fight's going to pick a specific flower because you'll be using that later during the rat phase. This is very important, so make sure to mark it. Alright, to start the fight, break the pillar in the middle to spawn the boss. So when you start the fight, he's going to do the first mini mechanic, which is the fireball mechanic. The tank will need to hold a Q or block all the fireballs. He will get stunned, and the bow will need to cleanse you, so then you can block the next fury attack. Alright, next the mini mechanic is to dodge roll. Again, he will do the fireball mechanic. This is where the tank will block all the fireballs and get cleansed here to block that next fury attack.
Okay.
Alright, now for the first major mechanic, the meteor mechanic. Basically, a bunch of meteors will fly on the top of the DPS and healers' heads. Basically, they will need to dodge the initial impact of the meteor so you don't take massive damage. Go back into the fire that's on the ground, grab a dot, clear all the smoke that is around the geysers that have been pinned so the next mechanic can work.
Okay.
While this is happening and the DPS are clearing the vents with the fire tank on the ground, the tank will stay in the middle, tank all the mini lizards and the boss that will appear a few seconds later. Make sure to block that fury attack as well. Another fireball mechanic, so make sure the tank blocks that. If you missed the vents originally, there will also be more meteors that fly down. Make sure to avoid them and clear as much as you can. Also, another fury attack will appear. Right, so if you've successfully cleared all the geysers, you'll be doing a dodge roll into the next major mechanic, which is the geyser mechanic. Basically, one of the 4 geysers will become active. Make sure you run to it as fast as possible, and it will launch you up into the sky to avoid a one-shot AoE attack. Once you get down, tank will have to soak another fireball mechanic, get cleansed so you can block the fury attack. Here comes another fury attack. Right, guys, time to talk about the rat phase, arguably the hardest part of this fight. So what will happen is the boss will teleport to the middle, raise your body up, and turn you into a rat. He will also summon a ring. When you become a rat, do not leave the ring. The ring will stun you and kind of mess up the mechanics, so just don't leave the ring and stand still. What will happen is you have access to a new ability called Burrow. When the boss comes close to you, he will try to eat you. So what you will need to do is, as he's about to eat you, you press 1. You will have to get used to the timing. But as you can see on the video, you can check the timing I used to Burrow underground. After this, you'll go to the next closest rat and try to eat that rat and Burrow as soon as it's about to be eaten. You'll need to do this around like 5 times, so hopefully no one messes up. If you get eaten, you get insta-killed, and that's a problem because you'll lose a player for the fight. If you're coming against a problem where you've nearly killed the boss, you're in rat phase and there's only 3 people left because your other guys got wiped, what you can do is, if you're the first rat to Burrow down and dodge the bite, at some point when he's going for a different person, you can Burrow up and take another bite. It is a little risky and requires a bit of timing, but you can do that if you are in that situation. After he stops trying to eat people, the ring will disappear. You're gonna then go to your pinned flower, which I told you to mark early on with the yellow pin. You're basically gonna go over it and turn back to your normal self. And that is the phase over. Alright, so now you have finished the rat phase. Basically, after this, you'll be repeating the same mechanics, but there are 2 massive changes when it comes to the rat phase and the geyser phase. So the first change is the geyser phase. Basically, once you get the boss under the 50% threshold, he will start summoning 2 geysers you need to jump on. Basically, what happens is you'll go to one of the random 4 geysers that's active, jump, fly across to the next geyser that will be active. You need to chain these jumps or you will die.
Oh my.
So the next major change is the next rat phase. Basically, the boss will become quite transparent and hard to see. Make sure you're really paying attention to the boss and know the timings of when he's about to bite you, which may come in practice. But besides that, those are the main 2 changes. Alright guys, so after that, you just keep repeating the same mechanics and kill the boss. I will now go over a few tips and tricks when it comes to tanking this boss. When the meteor phase starts and he goes invisible, there will be a bunch of lizards that spawn. Make sure you get aggro of all of them and don't kill them. Wait for the boss to spawn, pop counter barrier plus provoking roar, and start spamming your shield slam. Your counter barrier will refresh your shield slam, making it so you can spam like 1 million shield slams on the boss, basically keeping you perma aggro on the boss and also doing a decent amount of damage. The next tip is also making sure you're not consuming unnecessary amount of stamina. You need stamina to fly as a bird from the geysers. You also need stamina to burrow as a rat. You need stamina to also block some of the attacks, so make sure you're not unnecessarily using stamina.
Okay.
So the next tip, before the geyser mechanic begins, there will be a perfect roll. Make sure you do that correctly, because if you get hit by the damage, you'll get a pretty massive slow on you, and you might not be able to make it to the geyser to fly up and survive the mechanic. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully it helped you guys out when it comes to Island of Terror. I'll be making more guides in the future when it comes to Void Wastes and Calibris and all the tier 2 dungeons. So make sure to subscribe and check out the Twitch channel, as I'll keep uploading content. I stream basically every day as well.
Allez voir. Void Wastes.
So, I heard you like short, easy to understand and straight to the point guides.
Yeah.
Here's everything you need to know about level 50 tier 2 dungeon called Void Wastes.
Alright.
If you prefer the written version of this guide, link will be in the description and pinned comment. When you spawn, you will notice yellow barriers on the ground. Avoid walking into them, as it stuns and deals damage. Make your way towards first mini-boss by clearing all the mobs that are on your way. First mini-boss Blatras has a mechanic where he pulls everyone in and spawns a labyrinth of yellow barriers. Walk around them towards the outside area to...
Non, c'est pas Void Waste que je veux. Ben oui. C'est lui. Fait que ça n'a pas changé le donjon.
So, I heard it needs to also split up and have room, barriers, and move outside towards the safe zone. When you enter the boss room, you will notice many horn-shaped objects placed around the room. When the fight starts, 3 of these objects will have a dark purple beam connected to the boss, splitting the room in 3 parts. The party needs to also split up and have 2 players on each purple beam. The players need to block the beam from touching the boss by standing in front of it. But here is the twist. The beam applies stacks on each player, indicated above their heads. When reaching 30 stacks, the player gets 1 shot, so the 2 players need to block in turns.
Okay.
When one player reaches 20 stacks, the other steps in and blocks as the stacks drop when you are not blocking. Blocking is important, as if the boss gets 30 stacks, that means a complete wipe. Every fight starts with a dodge roll fury attack, so be ready to dodge. The boss also drops yellow AoE pools under 2 random players, so move away and don't stand in them. Periodically, the boss will mark 1 random player with a red orb above its head. A marked player needs to move to outside the arena and drop the red pulling AoE away from the team. It has big range, so make sure you're away from everyone. When weird text above its head appears and purple beams disappear, it means the mechanic is beginning. 1 player will be marked with a yellow orb above its head, while at the same time, 2 horn-shaped objects will also be marked with a darker yellow orb. The marked player needs to align himself with one of the marked horn objects, and when the orb above his head disappears, start running around the boss towards the second marked horn object. The boss will breathe yellow AoE, following the marked player and destroying the 2 marked horn objects. These 2 objects will always be next to each other, so it's easy to move around by standing close to the boss. Everyone else can stand behind the boss and have a free DPS period. After 50% HP, the boss repeats the same mechanic twice in a row, one after another, meaning a second random player will be marked and 2 different horn-shaped objects will be marked. After the mechanic, the purple beams are back and his normal patterns are all the same until the next mechanic. And that's it. Congratulations, you have successfully cleared the Void Waste dungeon.